Have fun.
I will. Oh, technical difficulties. We're good, appreciate it. All right, good morning, everybody. Everybody hear me okay? All right, so perfect. Thank you, Kirby, for giving me this opportunity to speak to all of you today regarding nVent, our MDI processes. When Kirby reached out to me to ask and speak to you all today, I started to think about what am I going to talk about. Talk about our process, give you the black and gray, the steps that we take. But then as I started putting my presentation together, I started to realize there's one fundamental or a few fundamental things to make a good MDI process work. It's leadership and problem solving. So today I'm going to really talk about those two things, a couple of aspects, a couple of keys, and a couple of stories that really go into leadership and problem solving to drive your MDI. I'm passionate about this. This really is the glue that holds a lot of our lean tools, business practices together on a day-to-day basis. As a lean manager, I'm a passive participant in our Gemba processes, our tier meetings, our daily walks on a day-to-day basis. Why? What I'm always looking for when I'm sitting there are the behaviors of the teams, the behaviors of the leadership team, and what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. There's four things I ask myself, or when I'm sitting there at the boards or watching the team interact. There's four things I watch for each and every day. And I ask you guys to kind of think about these questions as I go through the presentation here of how it incorporates into you in your team each and every day. The first thing I look at is leadership involvement, engagement. Are the leaders, not just the shop floor leaders, but the site leadership, are they engaged? Or are we, as we're doing MDI, taking our walks, doing our boards, is it a report out to like two people? The site leader, maybe even the lean manager if the site leader's out, but is a report out? It's not the point of MDI. Right? Are the leaders asking the right questions at the right time? The second question I usually typically look at is when we're taking the shop floor walks, does our shop floor team feel empowered? Or are they escalating things to managers? Notice I don't use leaders there, but managers, and say, can you fix something for me? I have a problem, but I need you to give me the solution. Empowerment is different than that. The third thing that I look for when I'm going out there is the metrics. Are the metrics driving the behavior we want? Always red, always green on the metric boards. Is it good? Is it bad? I don't know. Does it show me the trends? Do I understand? Can the team articulate where they're at, where they're going, and when they're going to get there? So you kind of listen to that PDCA process in there. And finally, the last thing I start to look at when I'm going out there is they start asking the question about, are the walks stressful to the team? Does the team feel like they're being micromanaged? You know, you got the leadership and the management team out there really needling. I'm asking them, why didn't you do this when you missed this, this, and this? But we never focus on the positive and the improvements, right? So as a passive participant, I sit back and I listen to that so I can provide coaching on a day-to-day basis. So a little bit about nVent as we get going here. A couple of years ago, we did separate from Pentair. We are a 2.1 global organization with over 9,000 employees. We are separated into three separate portfolios that you see behind me. I am part of the electrical enclosures aspect here in Anoka. I'll talk about that coming up. But we also have thermal management and our electrical fastening solution. Thermal management, really controlling the gases, the oils, through temperature control that are going through oil pipelines or through tubes. The other thing they provide for both commercial and residential are heat tracing for ceilings, for large buildings to melt away snow, or if in your home you have in-floor electric heat, we also provide that those aspects as well. The other part of our business is our electrical fastening solutions. They do a couple of things there. Grounding for lightning rods that go on top of buildings, grounding for railway, as well as in some cases, if you get above here, you start looking at all the connectors holding conduits, piping, and electrical wires to the ceiling and or walls, grounding bars that go in the back of electrical panels as well. We are a global manufacturer. We have 22 sites across the globe. We have hundreds of sales reps, hundreds of distributors, as well as distribution channels across the globe. So specifically, what are we doing in Anoka? We are 75 years strong. We started back in 1945 with Harry Hoffman building the first JIC enclosure. What he found was an opportunity of two wires when they come together at the end of runs or the beginning of a run to protect those wires from the element. Well, that little JIC box has grown into a large billion-dollar organization, which now we have over 12,000 active enclosures and cooling solutions. Mind you, that is all standard products, so we have a very large portfolio. Within that portfolio, all those items can be customized with holes, cutouts, as well as size change and color changes. So the things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, very large, high-volume, mixed model operations. We have 6 different value streams within the Anoka operations, our newest being high-density liquid cool, dealing with data centers across the globe. Each of these value streams will range anywhere between $30 million in annual sales to $340 million worth of annual sales per year. 2 facilities, 800 production team members, about 400 staff that deal with both Anoka as well as our global footprint. Our steel service operations is 95,000 square feet, and then the main facility is roughly about 750,000 square feet. My name is Mrocek. I am the lean manager for the Anoka campus. And as well as Kirby has mentioned, I've been there for 22 years. I have hosted a whole bunch of jobs. I started as a temporary on the shop floor. I've become a supervisor. I started the material flow initiatives within the main campus and the stainless campus. Lean manager, you name it, tail, I've done it. I have seen MDI, I've seen tier walks, I have seen gimbal walks go from 5-minute walks to 4-hour walks. I have seen production boards or metric boards that have had 20 metrics on the thing, all the way down to 5 metrics on it. So I have seen the gambit. I have lived the gambit. I have been one of those guys who have felt I've been micromanaged and put under the finger at the board when that leadership team comes to me. So I understand the feelings, the thoughts that sometimes our teams have on a day-to-day basis. So to get into it, MDI, what is it? This is much more than metrics. This is much more than gimbal walk. MDI to me is really the glue that holds things together. It's the glue that holds our processes together. It holds our systems together. I got a few words up there highlighted regarding what MDI is, but it drives sustained lean improvements by asking powerful questions and engaging in effective problem solving. To me, you got to have the 3. You got to drive the sustainment through the questions, through the problem solving. The purpose is a continuous improvement process with proper support and leadership. Not proper support and management, but leadership. Leaders asking questions, leaders empowering the teams. And you'll hear later the challenges that we've had in nVent over the course of the years, of the 4 hours down to even what we see today. How do we execute it? You see the tools that are up on that board. But really, it's driving to the point of impact. It's driving to the process owners, the operators on the shop floor that impact your customers. To me, MDI is not about the site leadership team, but it's about engaging with those team members on that shop floor. It's a cultural, behavioral change. Our focus, there's 4 things we really look at or kind of go on, and I'm going to touch a few of these. Number 1 being daily discipline, identifying priorities, and really root cause countermeasure. Can our teams articulate a 5 why? Can they walk through that in their mind? Not everything has to be on a piece of paper. Not everything even has to have financials tied to it, but there does have to be data and there does have to be metrics. Can our teams make data-driven decision-making? If they make data-driven decision-making, I see that on their countermeasures, and I see that as I look at their boards and the Paretos are improving and the trend charts are improving, I don't necessarily need to see a financial impact specifically for that action because I know I'm going to see it in the bigger picture. Sometimes that's tough for a financial person to see, okay? Because I've had those questions. How do you equate that? I even have it last year in my transformation plan. Well, you're telling me MDI, how can you attribute that savings to that? I can't, because it's a behavioral change. It's a daily improvement. I'm not going to run around and do savings on a day-to-day process that's sometimes making small incremental changes, and that's what it should be doing. Second principle, perfect is the enemy of better. Man, have I had to coach it, and I've been down this road from time to time. You go out there, you all hear the 80-20 rule. Guess what? You go out there, team member wants to show you something that they've done, the improvements they've made. All of a sudden, us as leaders or managers, guess what? Squirrel. Shiny object over here. I hear the 80%, but why didn't you get this other 20%? Continuous improvement, think about that 20%. That will become your 80% later. It's called continuous improvement for a reason. 80-20 rule, go with it. Help guide the leaders that always want perfection, that 100%, appropriately. And that's why I'm a passive active participant in our processes, because I'll pull those people out or I'll direct them appropriately. I actually guide a lot of our value stream managers in our role when we're doing that, to do that to myself and the site leader as well, because I tend to fall into that from time to time as well. What else can they have done? Capture the right data to drive the behavioral. How many here, show of hands, have corporate standards for metrics you have to follow? Oh, come on, I know there has to be a bunch more than that, right? I'm not a corporate standard guide. I don't follow corporate standard guides. I haven't. I usually change the process to fit the behaviors, the processes that I see fit. What I do hold for a standard is the outline. So you walk into our plant, the boards will look the same. The boards and the feel of the boards will look the same. But the content that's in there, or the metric that the team is capturing, has to drive the right behavior for that team. Not something that a site leader necessarily wants. If I have 6 different value streams all building different products, they may need to look at something a little bit different. Even when we get into our functional teams, all of our functional teams have boards. Our material planning, engineering, maintenance, you name it, and that's what you see on the bottom there. The information, besides the data, the information that's provided has to provide value. One of the things is I notice as site leaders is sometimes is we get so much information coming from the shop floor, we get down into the weeds. We all of a sudden, instead of MDI being high level and articulating a plan, we start to understand, why did they go that way? Why did they do that? We start second guessing the team on their decisions that they make. But if they're showing the improvement, they're showing what they can do, let's have trust and follow their path, right? Let's be more of that passive, active participant with those teams. I love this from Deming, the part of his quote, "A system must be managed, it will not manage itself." To me, that really encompasses MDI as a whole. Without MDI, things do start to fall apart. Why? You look at it in our day-to-day life, it's the same thing. Most everybody in here probably has a car. You don't change the oil in that car, guess what? The system's going to fail. That engine's going to fail. You don't change the fluids in there, the car is going to fail. Your grass, you don't cut the grass. Think about this. My home life with 7 kids, 3 triplets, and a whole host of others, if I don't keep things in check, it is pure anarchy. Some days, to be honest with you, I'm too tired and I just let the anarchy run. Last night was one of them. But as a whole, to be honest with you, I have to do that. Between sports, between following up on the kids' stuff, when are the opportunities, right? So I look at MDI, we sit down for dinner every single night. Guess what? I have a regiment that I go around with the kids and ask them, what are 2 things they learned? I can't ask everybody what they, give me their whole day. I'll never make it in time. Dinner will be like 4 hours long for me, right? But what are 2 things that you learned today? Right? It's in their mind. I actually have one of my daughters, as we're driving to places, I can see, okay, you got a missing assignment. She's to the point now of, why does she have a missing assignment? What happened, and ultimately when she's going to have that thing corrected. All I have to do is say, you have a missing assignment. She'll go through and acknowledge the problem, state the plan, and tell me when it's going to be done. Perfect. It is the quickest, simplest conversation I ever have with them. Leaders' responsibility is to apply process discipline. Home life, work life, you name it, we need to do that. This is our expectations. This is where we need to go, but we need to do it through engagement. Think about it as coaches, right? Put Super Bowl, hockey, baseball, NBA, you name it. But really, it's the PDCA cycle. MDI is the PDCA cycle, or a portion of it, right? Our job as coaches is we have a plan at the beginning and things change. That's okay. It should change. But our jobs is to do PDCA, keep the pressure on, get to the end goal, get to that trophy as fast as we possibly can in small incremental changes along the way. The big ones take forever. Right? But get there small and quick. Right? Leaders must apply that process discipline to drive that stability and improvement. This is just a simple framework that we can go through at nVent. Again, falls within PDCA. This is MDI as a whole. I can put a whole host of all the lean tools on the left side in the plan aspect. This is only probably a portion of them nowadays, right? But these are key to everything. You need to go do the process. Ultimately, you need to have the process to follow up. Layer process audits, Kamishi buy, MDI, the walks, the Gemba, all that will go in there to validate and keep your system in check. Ultimately, if something's not in check, following a strong, rigorous RCCM process. It doesn't need to be down deep at times and be full 8Ds and corrective actions and 10Ds, RCCMs. Sometimes it might be the simple things that they can do on their board. So here's some of the lessons that I've learned over the last couple of years, being at nVent, doing this job, being through all the things. And number one is engagement. Engagement of our leadership team. What I saw coming back is some of the things that a lot of companies will have, especially large organizations as ours, is we'll also see some turnover. To me, this isn't always a bottom-up approach. Later on, when it is through and ingrained in the behavior and the culture with your team, it also will feel like a bottom-up, because then your next level leaders, when they take that next step, they know the process, they drive the process. So it ends up being bottom up, but it only can be done if it's top down through training, through education, and through coaching, through driving engagement. I still sit there at times today, I actually have a follow-up with the team regarding our Gemba walk, to be honest with you, that it feels like a site report out. I have a team standing there, one or two. I don't have leaders all the time stepping forward, actively listening to the participants there and saying, hey, what I hear is you need support. I can provide that support, because in the back of their mind, they're going, holy crap, I got a lot of stuff to do. And if I take on that one more, that means I have more to do. I don't want to do that. We got to change and shift that thinking, right? Because it's not all about me. It's actually all about the operators that are on that shop floor, because guess what? They're the ones closest to the customer. I'm not. I'm about as far away from the customer as can be. Even though I get to go talk to them and get yelled at from time to time. But the reality is the product is there. Gemba walks became short. So what we've done, really a top-down culture. It has to be driven from your site leaders, has to be driven from that aspect, saying this is important. Attendance is important. I can tell you today, everybody shows up at our Gembas. If they're not there, like today, I won't be at ours. Guess what? One of my team members are at our Gembas. All right? A gap cannot happen. I ask for notes back from my team when they're there and I'm not there to tell me what happened that day and what's going on. So therefore, if there's something I need to follow up on, I can. Right? It has to be supported through succession planning, and you need to create and drive value for those that are all in attendance, but sometimes you have to help them understand what the value is for them. Second thing is empowerment. When we started looking at some of our accountability boards in the past and some of the actions that went up on there, it ended up being things like, hey, something's in the aisle, site leader, go fix that. Well, let's think about that for a minute. Why do we have the site leader worrying about stuff that's in the aisle? We have value stream managers, we have supervisors, we have team leaders, we have shop floor associates. Why aren't we pushing that and asking the questions? Why? In a lot of cases, what happens is when something's in the aisle, a leader or a manager at this point, not even a leader, will walk up to him and go, why did you put that there? Ask the right question. What caused you to put that there? What then allow you to put it somewhere else, right? It's a longer question to ask, but it becomes a different question, and it takes down the fences of defenses of saying, hey, you just blame me to doing something instead of inquiring why it stopped, and then going through the problem solving to understand what was there and empowering that team to figure out how to solve the problem. Metrics, I talked about it earlier, corporate. This is what we need to follow. You need to do first pass yield, you need to do this. Well, at the end of the day, that might not make sense. Maybe it's PPM. Maybe there's a different quality metric that makes sense for that cell, for that area to measure. And I don't expect it to be the same, because guess what? I have 6 different value streams plus all the functional teams. What's important to them in quality and the behaviors that are drive are different upon each one of those value streams. At the end of the day, there's a site metric that we're responsible for, and I see that in trends. And at the end of the day, if those are improving, I know they're measuring the right thing at their value stream levels. If they're always red, and going the wrong direction, I'm going to spend a little bit more time asking the question. To be honest with you, I just had this just this past week in our materials walk. Our purchasing manager was looking at his board and he was measuring the right thing for the longest time. However, for the last 3 months, he's been well below goal, but he has 4 other things. So as I was listening to him talking, he was talking about all the other things that are impacting him and impacting his customers. And then you get to this one metric and goes, you know what, we've actually been good here and this isn't. So I asked him a simple question of, so if this metric's not driving the behavior you're looking for and you have something else, should we change it? Not always looking for an answer, but plant that seed. And I can guarantee he's going to go back and actually take that metric down. That will become a KPI that he'll monitor somewhere else, but then the one that's in front of his team, the one that drives the behavior, he'll change that. He'll put what is the next thing that they need to look at. Metrics should not be static. They need to change based off of conditions. Business changes. Our metrics are going to change. Finally, problem solvers. Came back, we had a gap. Fire, ready, fire, right? Forget the aim in there. PDCA. Instead, we don't even have the P. We have the do, and then we just go put it out there, right? The gap there is a lot of times we do this because of managers out there going, why? The problem occurred today, why didn't you have me the solution yesterday? Can't do that. But as leaders, what we have to do is understand and educate our problem solvers and train them to get to PDCA, ready, aim, and fire. Create a good, cohesive plan, understand your data, and go out. Doesn't mean that this is a 30-day exercise, by the way. You can do this type of stuff within 5 minutes. The smartest people in our shops are those that are on the shop floor. They're the ones touching the product on a day-to-day basis. Engage with them, get them to think in a problem-solving format. What I've seen as we start doing this, I have team leaders and supervisors and operators now that are adjusting how the flow of their line occurs, where product runs, where people are at. I don't need a supervisor all the time to say, hey, this is where we need to adjust people. Do they have to inform them? Of course. But they're making the decisions based off of real-time data that's sitting in front of them. So just kind of lesson learned, engagement, leadership. Team members must be field empowered by leaders, right? Metrics, leaders allowing for flexibility in our metrics. A site of problem solvers, leaders must engage, train, and develop those leaders into problem solvers. And if I have 800 problem solvers, 800 leaders, think about the MDI and the continuous improvement that I get. So impacts that we've seen just in the last couple of years. So I have changed our MDI process several times over the last 2 years. I love to change things. If it doesn't fit the behavior, I change it, okay? I adjust it, and sometimes they're micro changes. Because what I'm doing is I'm looking for what are the behaviors, how do I get my leadership team engaged to drive that all the way through our organization. What I have seen is engaged leadership, everybody's being there and actually starting to ask questions. Operator level engagement, we have seen year over year impacts. So from a financial standpoint, I can tell you all the MDI and all the continuous improvement dollars that I've saved, but I can tell you from an overtime perspective, we were running close to 17% overtime 2 years ago. We are now running 3 to 4%. And that's before obviously some challenges out in the economy, but that is when we were at some of our busiest time, we were running 3 to 4%. Think about the morale on the team. You can't measure morale. Retention, you name it, you go through that, and those are sometimes those financial metrics you can't capture, but you can capture it in your productivity and your overtime metrics. Overtime reduction, 50%. PPM improvement. This is the first time in my history that I've seen us hit below 2,000 PPM across our 6 value streams, and we deal with OEM customers to our standard product, you name it. For us, getting below 2,000 PPM is quite a feat, and we are very proud of doing that, and that is all from the engagement and driving the team's quality all the way through the organization. So one last thought before I hand it over here. MDI, relentless pursuit of excellence through the use of tool and engaged leadership. Without engaged leadership, MDI processes are very, very challenging. Thank you. I'm Mrocek. Have a great day.